Welcome to today's Ask a Specialist workshop. Today we will be discussing hand skills in young children, looking at normal fine motor development in children birth to 3. So that's generally what we're going to be covering. We'll look at fine motor development in infants, toddlers, young children, and then we'll also talk about some fun activities that parents and caregivers can do with their kiddos to encourage that fine motor development and strengthen hand skills in young children. So I'm Ann Davidson Martinez, and I'm the Family Infant and Toddler Program Director at Las Cumbres. And I am a mother to 9-year-old twin boys, and I have 2 bonus children, one 17 and one 18. And I've been in early intervention services for 8 years now. And with me today is Patty Delgado. She's an occupational therapist, and we've worked together at Las Cumbres for 8 years now. And she's been in early intervention for 20 years and has been an occupational therapist for 30 years. So Patty brings, a great depth of knowledge and experience to our work. She's, really wonderful to work with and has, fantastic ideas for parents to do activities with their kiddos. So I'm excited to be with her today and to share some of her knowledge with you and support how I can. And then going into some housekeeping stuff, it is Las Cumbres' 50th anniversary this year. So we have been providing family services for 50 years. We started in White Rock 50 years ago. And shortly after, we expanded services from adult services to include services for young children. We primarily work with children ages birth to 6. We do occasionally go beyond that. We also still have our adult services programs as well. So we have a wide variety and range of services for families in the area. We serve all of Rio Arriba County, all of Taos County, all of Los Alamos County, and all of Santa Fe County. However, the Family Infant and Toddler program does not serve Taos, but we do have other programs that go that far. We actually also go all the way down to the border area as well. So if you're interested in learning more about our programs and the work that we do with children and families, you should visit our website. If you guys have questions throughout the workshop, feel free to enter them into the chat and we can answer them as they come. If you'd rather, think about it, or if a question comes up after the workshop, you can always visit our Ask a Specialist part of our website, where you can enter in a question and then get a response. So there's multiple ways to ask your questions, to reach out to us via the website. Without further explanation, we'll move right into it. So I'll turn it over to Patty, who is going to start with a video for us to watch, and then we'll move into talking about the structure of the hand, how that impacts fine motor development and hand strength, and then share with you guys some really fun ideas to do with young children.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I have to say, fine motor skills is one of my favorite things. It may seem a little strange to get excited about these things, but the hand is just absolutely amazing. And I would just want to be able to share some information about that, things that you've probably never thought about. And, when we talk about fine motor skills, we're basically talking about any muscles in your body that are small muscles that do small movements. And so that can be in your eyes, your hands, even your feet. Today, we're going to be talking about fine motor skills in hands. And I want to talk about, how those develop. And, the truth is that fine motor skills are not something that a lot of parents think about. A lot of times it's not really on their radar. And if you think about it, usually the questions that parents are asked are, oh, is he walking? Is he rolling? Is he crawling? Is she talking yet? These are the questions that parents get asked. I mean, they don't usually get asked, oh, are they shaking a rattle? Or, oh, can they hold a pencil? Those just aren't the things that are typically thought of. And a lot of times we don't really think about fine motor skills until you notice that your child maybe, at 8 years old can't tie their shoes, or, um, your child isn't able to open a cheese stick. I mean, heck, sometimes I can't even open a cheese stick because they're hard, but, sometimes these little wrappers and little things that we're trying to open, that's when you start to realize. Or, I've talked to a friend of mine who is a preschool teacher, is a kindergarten teacher, and she was saying that she's noticed that a lot of kids, lately have been coming into her classroom, and she has to spend a lot of time with them, helping them opening their lunch boxes, um, zipping up their pants, pulling up their pants, being able to just manipulate scissors and things like that, that in the past these kids have been able to do. And so it really got me thinking, and I found some really great resources. So I want to share with you now a video that I found. And this video, I will say, I just want to preface, this is a woman, I love her website. So you can look at that at some point, but she's from South Africa. So some of her vocabulary is going to be a little bit different, but it's very self-explanatory as you watch the video. And she does plug some of her products, but I just really, this is the best video I've seen to explain it. So that's why I want to play it. Okay. all families that I know of have these mobile devices, and their kids are very interested. And often we do, we let our kids play with them. It's a great distraction when we need our children to be quiet. And I'm not saying you should never do that. It's really a hard thing to try to balance, and I really get it. But I think that we have to just try to be more mindful about what we're offering our children and making certain activities available for them. I want to talk a little bit about the anatomy of the hand. It's pretty incredible. The hand can do so many different things, and this is really what sets us apart as humans. And the important thing about the hand is all the different arches in our hands. We have lateral arches and transverse arches, and the way those arches develop is through bearing weight. So babies first start that when they're on their tummies, and they're putting weight on their hands, and then they start to crawl, and they spend hours crawling and hours on their tummy. And if they don't get that, you can imagine that they are not getting all those arches developed, and the fine muscles in their hands, the intrinsic muscles, the muscles that all stay within the hand, those are not being developed. And so that's one of the main reasons we push tummy time and crawling. And then the other thing we want to think about is the two different sides of the hand. I mean, this is probably not something anybody has ever really thought about unless you happen to study fine motor skills. And that is the two different sides of the hand. And so if you imagine a line here, this part right here is your strength side, and these fingers are your skill side. So if any of you have ever had an injury to your pinky or your ring finger, and you try to hammer, it's almost impossible, or it's almost impossible to open a jar that's really stuck without these fingers. And so, we think of our pinky as being like, how is that possible? It's the smallest finger, but it is actually one of the most important fingers. And so building up that side as the strength side. And when this side is nice and strong, it allows the skill side to be able to do the work. And so that's the important thing about trying to think about those two things when you're doing fine motor activities. And kids who struggle, it may be that they need more work to build up this strength side before they can use their fingers. The other thing to think about is when you're sitting down to do a fine motor task, it's important to think about how you're actually sitting and how kids are sitting. Now, I tell parents all the time, one of the best places for your kids to be is on the floor. And that's even true for fine motor activities. However, as a mom, I know how hard it is to be chasing little pieces and things that roll. And, if they can just get spread very, very quickly. And so a lot of times it's very helpful to have your child at a table in a chair, preferably a high chair, where you have a lot of control about where that child is. They're not going to be able to get down. And so, I recommend for moms with young kids, to think about when they're doing meal prep, have that be a time that your kid can join you in the kitchen, your young child in the kitchen, and you can be giving them, maybe Play-Doh or blocks or things like that you can supervise, but they're there and they're able to do it. And then when they're done with that activity, you put it back in a shoebox, put the lid on it, and put it up high. And that way you're not going to be worried about them trying to access that when you don't want them to. And so, and then the other important thing to remember is that you can keep some of these activities that aren't maybe choking hazards, keep them down low so that the kids can access those things and enjoy them even when you're not supervising. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. And so I'm going to show you again this next slide. So this also comes from the Happy Handwriter website. She just has so many good things on there, but it's just important. This is talking specifically about handwriting, and but this is good to remember for kids doing any kind of activity at the table. And so just remember that, the feet should be flat on the floor. And obviously, if the child's too little, figure out a way that their feet can be supported by something. In the old days when we had those great big phone books, that was one way, but you can use blocks or bricks or an empty box turned upside down. Anything, if you can find a chair that has some kind of a footrest for the child, they will be much more stable. They will be able to focus, and that stability, you have to have good stability in your core to be able to use your muscles that are way out here on your arm. And so you just want to make sure that the child is really stable. And then the other thing you want to make sure is, a lot of times I see kids sitting at the tables and their arms are way up here, and it really is hard. If you can imagine sitting at a table and trying to do activities up here, it's really difficult. So we want to make sure that the table is right at elbow height, and that the knees, hips, and ankles are all at about 90 degrees. So that is another thing that I wanted to just encourage you to keep in mind. If your child, especially if your child is having a hard time focusing, if their legs are swinging or their arms are up here, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for them to stay focused on an activity.
Patty, when we think about babies, what came to mind was, again, that importance of tummy time and floor time to build those core muscles so that when they are older and sitting at a desk, they have the strength required to sit. So that's another way that tummy time, you'll see the benefits of tummy time throughout.
That's exactly right. And then something else to think about, that a lot of times we just want to jump right in and start doing activities, which is great. But if you have a child who is really reluctant to do some of these things, I mean, and this is where, an occupational therapist or a developmental specialist might be able to jump in and figure out, why is it that they're so reluctant? And if they're having a hard time with activities here, we have to look back. We have to look closer to their bodies and figure out, well, gosh, maybe they don't have the stability in their shoulder to be able to stabilize at their shoulder and their elbow and their wrist to be able to use their fingers out here. And so that's something else that we talk about. And we want to make sure that kids are getting lots of that heavy work activities, walking, wheelbarrow walking, animal walks, crab walks. Some of those things they can't do till they're a little bit older, but little kids, if you hold them at their hips, you can have them do wheelbarrow walking, down the hallway on their way to get their teeth brushed. That's an easy way to, every day when you're going to go brush their teeth, you can just get into the habit of doing the wheelbarrow walking down the hall.
It's springtime. It's the time that everybody's working on their gardens, and you're beginning to get outside. So letting them, carry things outside or dig in the dirt, and really help you with some of those activities that you're already, beginning to do.
That's a great idea. Yes. And I think about, when you're carrying groceries in from the car, let your little ones help you, even if they just are carrying a can or a half gallon of milk, or whatever it is, a box, something that they can lift and carry. That's another easy way to start getting kids involved in these activities. And one thing that I have thought about a lot too is that I think, and Anne, you probably really know about this with twin boys, but one thing I've noticed, and I know it was even a struggle for me as I was raising my kids, is sometimes as moms, it's just easier to do it for them instead of letting kids do these things for themselves. For example, even feeding themselves, or peeling an orange, or turning on the faucet. And what are some things that you remember that sometimes it was just like, easier to do than to let them do it?
Well, I mean, sometimes, I would just do it for them. And, in retrospect, I wasn't in early intervention when they were little babies. And there were, I feel like there were more things that I could have done as a parent. But, with twins, especially, a lot of times it was survival mode. and the easiest way to get out the door or to accomplish a task was to just do it for them. But as they got a little bit older and I was introduced, to early childhood intervention, I learned little ways to incorporate opportunities for your kids to practice these skills, or your babies to practice these skills, when you're already in the middle of a task. So, it was too much for me to allow them to like try to figure out their zippers, but I would start the zipper on their jacket for them, and then they could practice pulling the zipper up, and then when we were done, pulling the zipper down. So just little ways to incorporate opportunities for them to have those chances to practice those hand skills, whether it was opening a jar, even if I started to open it for them. It could be, there were lots of, different ways, putting something into a container, taking it out, even having them crawl over to the dryer and pull things out of the dryer. So, just opportunities in our daily routines and activities to incorporate some of these skills. But there were times when it was just survival mode and I couldn't even bring myself to practice those things. So I think it's giving yourself grace and allowing yourself, sometimes you're going to need to just get out the door, but when you have the time, giving kiddos those chances.
Yeah. The other thing that is something to think about is when we do train our kids to be able to do some of these things by themselves. I've seen it so many times, and a lot of times you see it in preschool classes when you go in and you see the kids who have been allowed to go in and wash their hands by themselves in their bathrooms. They know how to climb up to the sink. They know how to turn it on. They know how to get the soap. They know how to rub and dry their hands. And then you see the kids whose parents have done that for them since day one, and they're not quite sure what to do. And so if you think about it, as hard as it is to sometimes let your kids do some of these skills, it does pay off. And all of a sudden you've got kids who are much more independent. All of a sudden you've got kids that don't need help to open up their little fruit snacks, who don't need help to peel the orange, who don't need help to put on their shoes and zip their zippers. And when they get to kindergarten, the teachers aren't going to be spending their time helping them with those skills. They're going to be able to actually be teaching them other skills. And it's interesting, going back to the decline in fine motor skills that teachers have been seeing. And a lot of it has been attributed to the Back to Sleep campaign, which was about 20 years ago. And now it's because of the mobile technology that has come in. And so it's like on all these fronts where, fine motor skills are being sort of pushed out of what we think is important. But if you think about it, when kids get to school, when they get to kindergarten, studies show that most kids spend between 30 and 60% of their day at school doing fine motor tasks. And if they aren't ready, they are going to feel behind, and it's going to be a struggle getting them to enjoy school if they're constantly feeling like, oh, I'm having a hard time. I can't do this. I'm tired. My hand is tired from writing and all those things. So that's something to sort of keep in mind, that we want kids to be nice and strong and be able to do the things that their peers can do, and not let the fine motor skills be what causes them to struggle in school. So
I think there's a question in the chat about what age is wheelbarrowing activity safe to try.
I'm thinking that they might be talking about wheelbarrow activities where
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Legs and
yes.
Okay. So to be honest, I've done that with kids. I mean, if they're crawling, if they're able to crawl and support their weight on their hands for crawling, they can do the wheelbarrow. Now, I would try it. I would definitely try it on like a carpeted surface at first. They are not, like a 1-year-old is definitely not going to understand how to put one hand in front of the other. But, and one thing to definitely keep in mind is you're not going to be holding them at the ankles or even at the knees. You're going to hold them at the waist when they're little bitty like that, because they don't have the stability in their back to be able to hold themselves up and to support all that weight. So If a child is struggling, hold them up as close to the trunk as possible. And if they really still can't figure it out, you might need to recruit some help to come in and help the child like figure out to go forward. Sometimes if you put a fun toy that they want to get, or if they can see another, like maybe an older brother or sister doing the wheelbarrow, that will help them. But I don't think that there's a particular, I mean, obviously if a child's not crawling, they're definitely not going to be able to do that. But I don't think there's any harm in starting that young, especially if you're giving them the stability and support at their trunk.
And Patty, what about having them start on their elbows and doing sort of that, like an army crawl in a wheelbarrow?
That would, I mean, that's always great. I would think it might be in some ways. I think it might be more natural to do it on their hands, but whatever they can manage, I think is great. If that's easier for them, definitely give that a shot. So, and if any of you have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat. And just know that on our website, there's also a place that you can enter questions. You can always call Las Cumbres, and if you have specific concerns about your child, I mean, let's just say you really don't know if they are where they need to be. Somebody can help you answer some of those questions. And the wonderful thing about New Mexico is that our early intervention services, we're pretty generous in this state compared to a lot of other states. And so we have, our services are basically free and available for families who need them. And so don't hesitate if you have any doubts at all, to contact us, and we can kind of help walk you through whether or not that's something you think you might need for your child.
Or even if parents just want more information, if they're not sure, it doesn't even have to be that you're necessarily concerned about an area of your child's development. It could just be, hey, I'm wanting some more information. So because of the way that our program is structured, any child can be referred for any reason and is entitled to, the intake, the developmental evaluation, and then we determine eligibility after that. But every child is entitled to those first couple steps before we get to the eligibility part. And the developmental evaluation can offer a lot of information that could be helpful. So, a lot of times people ask, when should I make a referral, or how do I know when I should make a referral for my child? And it's, if you're wondering that, or if you're curious, there's no reason a parent can't make a referral on their own.
Yeah. So I also have a link to a motor skills milestone, like a fine motor skills milestone checklist that I don't really want to go over every single thing right now, because it's something that, every parent's going to have a child of different ages, and you all can kind of just check it out. It will be on the website after, and you'll be able to just kind of get an idea like, oh, wow, is my child doing this? And I will tell you, a lot of times the reason your child isn't doing it is maybe because they haven't had the opportunity to practice. And so, start giving them those opportunities. Like all of a sudden you'll say, oh, wow, I did not realize that my child should be able to start stacking blocks, by the time they're 2. And you might not know that, especially if you don't have blocks in your house for them to play with. So it might just help spur some ideas of, oh, wow, this is something that we could be working on, or that I can have available to my child. And so now in the last part of this presentation, I wanted to start giving you guys some ideas that you can incorporate that are fun. I have scoured the web and looking for different fun ideas. When you're in the field, a lot of times you just need some new ideas. And I tell you, I found some really, really great sites. 50 activities for your fine motor activities for your toddler. And to be honest, a lot of these things are things that you don't have to go out and buy, fancy toys. A lot of times they're very simple things that you might already have at home, or, it might be something that you can pick up at the dollar store or even at the grocery store, for goodness sake. They don't have to be difficult things. So
Well, Patty, didn't we see a mom recently who had created her own shape sorter out of a box? So, she had some shapes and, just traced and cut the holes into the box. So, you really can create some of these things with whatever you have in the house.
exactly. I mean, even helping, I don't know if the idea of having a toddler help you to sort socks sounds like a nightmare, or if it sounds like a fun idea. But having a toddler help trying to match the socks and put the socks together. I mean, even some simple things like that, or just taking the clothes out of the dryer. That's something that toddlers can do. And yeah, it takes a little bit extra time, but it's starting to build a lot of those skills. The other thing I remember when my kids started going to a little preschool is I was amazed. And, I'm an occupational therapist, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have failed my children because the teacher expected them to sweep up their crumbs after they had their snack. And I thought, oh my goodness, I would never have thought to give my child a small little broom and dustpan to be able to do that. And pretty sure they have those at Metzger's, the little teeny tiny ones. And that's such a great skill to be able to do that at a young age, and to be able to use a sponge to wipe up spills. You can just go get a regular sponge at the store and cut it into fourths, and all of a sudden you have a very small little sponge that a kid can use to wipe up spills. These are great in the bathtub, just for the squeezing. You can see there's, all the squeezing activities. You can write with those bathtub markers on the bathtub wall, and then use this to clean it. And if you look at, when I'm doing that, I'm getting all this nice stability and strengthening in my arm and shoulder. And the other thing I want to talk about, and as I was getting ready to do this talk, I realized, oh, there's this I want to say, and there's this I want to say. And two of the things that, actually there's three upcoming topics that I would like to cover at some point. And maybe you all can give me some feedback if there's any other things that you want, or if these sound interesting. But I would like to do a workshop just specifically on handwriting and pre-handwriting activities, because there's a whole wealth of information out there about that I can't go into today. Also, cutting skills. When do you introduce your kids to scissors? And believe it or not, I know this is going to strike fear in the hearts of many mothers and fathers, but age 2, believe it or not, age 2 is when kids have the skills. There they are.
These are a little safer than handing them just a regular pair of scissors at 2 if you're nervous about that.
Yeah, those are Play-Doh scissors that are pretty widely available, and they're not going to cut skin or hair, so that's a great way to start. But I'd like to give some scissor skills are very difficult, and this is one area that kids are not coming prepared into kindergarten with these skills, and so I was thinking about doing a workshop on that. I was also talking about doing a workshop specifically on, kids in the kitchen and the activities that you can do in the kitchen with your kids, different fun things. So those are some things that I was thinking about. But I wanted to talk really quick about one of the best things that you can do for getting your kids ready for writing and all of that is doing any kind of work on a vertical surface. So I love easels for kids. And, honestly, my kids are pretty much grown. I have a high schooler and then the other 2 that are out the door. And I still have the little easel in our kitchen because we use it all the time to talk about school, different concepts. And, we can draw on it or write it, or I can write on there something that we need to remember, or, vocabulary words, So to me, I mean, this is something that my 22-year-old got when he was just little, and we're still using it today. So that is a great toy that will give you a lot of bang for your buck. And when you're writing on a vertical surface, if you see, when you're writing like this, your arm is out, so you're getting stability here, and your wrist is back. And That right there is what you need to have good skill with these fingers. You need to be able to have your wrist back for stability, your shoulder to be able to do that. So anytime you can get a child to do activities on a vertical surface, that's great. You can put their little drawing on the fridge and let them color, you can tape it and let them color that way. If you don't have an easel, you can get an easel. You can have them use paintbrushes with water outside on a brick wall. Anytime that you can get them on a vertical surface, that's one of my favorite things to recommend. The other thing that I like to talk about is, it's normal. I can't go too much into detail about this because that's for the next workshop, but little tiny pieces of chalk or crayons is a great way to make sure that your kids are grabbing it this way, because they won't be able to hold it this way very easily. So don't throw away those broken crayons and those broken pieces of chalk. And that's not to say that there's not some benefit for, little tiny kids holding it with their whole hand, because they have to go through that developmental sequence. But if you have a child that's 4 years old and they're still trying to do that, you can start trying to give them little tiny pieces so that they have to use those 3 fingers to hold it. All right, so I know Ann and I have some different activities that we thought we'd go over. So we talked about for young babies, tummy time, tummy time, tummy time, tummy time, tummy time. And any way you can keep them interested and occupied on their tummy, with a mirror, with a water mat, all those fun things that you can have in front of them.
And then eventually, sometimes people have the little Playmobiles where their child lays under them, where they can start reaching for toys, or, if you're offering them a toy, just having them, grasp it, just that very beginning, beginning reaching, beginning grasping.
Exactly. And, I will say, I'm all for safety. I would never want, anything to ever happen to a child. But I think that it's important to know, and you're going to have to decide this for your own child, if they're a child that puts everything in their mouth, or but even those kids who do that, if you are watching them, like if you are totally committed to watching them, they can play with things that are hazardous, like coins. And if you want to show them that.
Yeah. So this is, it's a little piggy bank, coin bank, and then inside, so they can even help, open it. And then
and put them on the table. And
okay, is that okay? All right, so they'll practice picking them up and then putting them into the box. So it's using their skills in a couple ways: hand-eye coordination and releasing, and then also the fine motor skills needed to pick the coin up off a flat surface.
Exactly. And if you don't have a piggy bank, there are so many different ways you can get
Coffee can,
yep,
cutting a slot.
right. And if you don't particularly want your child to play with coins, and again, this for young kids, I love it, but it's definitely a one-on-one. I even count the coins. I make sure, I say, okay, we've got 10 coins, and I need to make sure I have 10 coins when we're done. And I don't turn my head for a minute if I've got a kid that puts things in their mouth. So just something to be aware of. But you can use poker chips. Poker chips are great because they're a lot bigger, and you can, like Ann said, cut a slot into a butter dish, or a butter container, whatever, however you do that. And then let's see here. Let me find some other. Yeah, these are called squigs, and they are they're suction cups. and they're fabulous because they, you can have the child use two hands together. And if you see, look, they're really having to use their hands and their small muscles in their hands to pull them apart or to pick them up off the table. And I have seen kids, 6 months old, be able to, like, the parents will put them onto their high chair tray, and then they pull them off. So, this is a great interactive game, even for younger kids. And then,
Do you have a preference? And are you going to show something?
yeah, this is another one of my favorite things. This is just a $1 spice bottle. I usually try to get something that smells good, nutmeg or cinnamon instead of garlic. And kids love to be able to take off lids and put them back on again. Okay, and so this is a great activity. And even before they can do the lids, you see this, you can have this on or off. And one of my favorite things is to get these little noodles. I think in Spanish they're called fideo. I think there may be vermicelli. You can buy these. I don't know if they have them at Smith's, but I know they have them at Walmart, and I'm pretty sure they have them at the dollar store. And so, this is great activity, even for kids who put things in their mouth, because if they end up getting some dry pasta, it's certainly not going to hurt them. And they're probably not going to be very motivated to keep putting it in their mouth. But if they do, it's not going to hurt them. And I have seen 18-month-old children who struggle with fine motor be completely captivated with this activity for 15 to 20 minutes. And you can make it easier by taking the top off, but I've seen kids love the challenge of picking these up off the table and putting them into the hole. And then you take the lid off and you ask them to shake it out. So all of those things that's a great, cheap, easy, safe, fine motor activity that you may not have thought about before.
Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask us directly, or put them into the chat? And again, just plugging the Ask a Specialist portion of our webpage, where you can enter the question into the website and then get a response. That's another option as well. And
that is tough when they get to the point where they know how to roll over.
mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think if you can, you might have to spend some time face to face, like laying in front of them the opposite way so they can see your face, and playing with that way. If you have I call plastic mirrors, that are safe for kids. A lot of times that's motivating for them.
Okay.
Tummy time can also be over your leg, or if you're laying in bed, putting the baby on your chest. So, there's other ways to look at tummy time where it's not directly on the floor, because I had one that despised tummy time and trying to get him to spend any time. I mean, even if he wasn't able to roll over, he was just screaming. And so, we did a lot of tummy time where he'd lay over, my thigh, or I'd have him on my chest, and there's even the boppy, putting the boppy pillow down, that, half moon shaped pillow on the floor. You can just roll a blanket.
Okay. Those are good ideas.
Yeah. And the putting something under their arms like that, a rolled blanket, pillow, whatever, can make it a little bit more difficult for them to just flip right away. And I've also noticed that by you might have luck, and I mean, I know you can't stay there for too long probably, but just putting some weight on their bottom and pressing down a little bit sometimes will give them a little bit more stability, that they feel like they can stay there for a little bit longer. So you might try some of those ideas.
Okay, one more question. Have you heard from any parents, any observations about diaper wraps, and how, like, you have to wrap them pretty tight for them not to leak. But this little guy that I watch is darling, but he's just so bound. Like it's hard for him to sit. It's hard for him to pull his legs up. And I mean, I'm sure it's better for the earth to have a diaper wrap, but let me tell you, disposable diapers just allow them to move so much easier. Have you heard about any solutions for that?
Is it just a regular cloth diaper? Because mine were in cloth diapers for a little while, but it was,
Yeah.
I feel like they
Well,
had
mine-
quite a bit of flexibility.
Yeah, it's kind of a new thing called a diaper wrap, where it's like back when I was diapering my own kids 30 years ago, it was, a little cloth diaper and plastic pants, but this is like a cloth diaper sewn to a cloth wrap, and they have these snaps that are built in, and you have to snap it pretty tight, but it's like it digs into their tummy, and there's this big, I don't know, it's just so bulky that, I mean, the first time I noticed it was when I changed his diaper, and he was happy as can be to be freed. So anyway, I just didn't know if any research had been done about that kind of thing, because it's definitely a more green type of way to.
But there are, and I'm wondering if they're using it for a specific reason, because, like you mentioned, there are cloth diapers that aren't prohibitive of movement. And so I'm wondering if maybe they could try a different kind of cloth diaper, if that's something that's, important to them. I've never heard of the diaper wrap, so I'm having a hard time conceptualizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Patty?
Yeah.
I haven't either, but I can certainly look into that. And if any parents have any other information about that, we'd welcome your information. I'm thinking that maybe the child needs to go to the next size up, possibly.
Uh-huh.
That might be part of it, but you might also just, talk to the parents and see if they've noticed that, and you can tell them your concern and see if there might be another alternative.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Well, it looks like we only have a couple minutes left. And if you were not able to ask a question, go ahead and access the Ask a Specialist part of our webpage, put your question in. You can always call Las Cumbres directly if you have, additional questions that you're just wanting to speak to somebody. I did real quick before we close. First of all, I want to thank Patty, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate your presence. Our next workshop is going to be led by Angelo Sandoval, who is the program manager. The focus of our workshop will change or shift a little bit the next time. We've been looking at a lot of development, and next time it'll be, strengthening relationships between dads and their children. So go to our website if you're, wanting to find more information. You can also access our website to see past workshops. So if you're curious about what we've covered before, you can look on our website and actually see those recordings. And this will be recorded as well. So you or friends or coworkers can view it after today if needed. Thank you everybody for joining. And I think that's it.
I want to just say one last thing. I want to make sure that you all look at the website and go to this presentation. Like I said, we put several links on there for different websites for fine motor activities, things that are just so much fun that you can do with your kids that you may not have thought of, that just give you some fresh ideas. So, be sure to look at those. I have a link on there for a recipe for Play-Doh, homemade Play-Doh with Kool-Aid that I just love. And Play-Doh is one of those, along with easels, Play-Doh would be the other absolute must for kids. So, so anyway, you might just want to think about that. Ziploc bags, putting their snacks in here, using pipe cleaners with different kinds of cereal, or even little pastas. Those are safe activities. So, and there are just so many different ideas and activities. And I thank you all so much. It was a lot of fun. And let us know what other ideas you have or questions you have for upcoming topics. And if you will fill out the survey, that would really be helpful to us as well. So